let's talk about the next idea. So let's talk about what a box plot is. So a box plot is just a quick way to summarize your data set. So if you have a data set with a whole bunch of numbers, a box plot is a visualization of a summary of your data set. So the reason it's called a box plot is that the visualization looks like a box lying on its side. And there's a vertical line somewhere inside the box. And then there's two lines coming out of the box. And at each of the edges, it corresponds to a certain quantity in your data set. So let me label the edges here. So the leftmost edge, or the first component of this box plot, corresponds to the minimum value of your data set. So that said, what do you think the last component represents? Yeah, the maximum value. So you just go through your data set, pick the biggest number, and that's the max. So that leaves these three components of the box plot. So let's talk about those. So the second component is the 25th percentile. So it's the number that is greater than 25% of all the values in the data set. And this is abbreviated as capital P with a right subscript of 25. So the 25th percentile, or P25, is the second component of this box plot, which represents the number that is greater than 25% of all the values. So this 25th percentile also has another name. It's also called the first quartile, because a quarter is 25%. So the first quartile is also abbreviated as Q1. Any questions? Okay, let's talk about the next component of the box plot. So that is the 50th percentile, or P50, also abbreviated as the second quartile, or Q2. But it turns out that this P50, or Q2, is the number that is greater than 50% of all the values, or greater than half the values. And that also has actually a common name that we've already talked about. Anybody happen to know?
Mean.
So it turns out that the mean means that you add up all the numbers and divide by everything. So that number, the mean, isn't necessarily greater than half the values.
Median?
It turns out to be the median. There you go. So the median is where you have to sort all the numbers in order and pick the number in the middle position that happens to be greater than half the values. So the 50th percentile is the same as the median. All right, and then the last component, any guesses as to what it might be if we did P25 and P50? P75. So P75 is the 75th percentile. It's also abbreviated as the first quartile, or Q1, or Q3. So Q3, the third quartile. So these are the components of the box plot. So these 5 components. The min and the max as the extreme edges, and then in the middle is where you have the bulk of your data set, the 25th percentile up through the 75th percentile. And so basically the way that you would find the min and the max, that's easy. Just identify the smallest and largest numbers in your data set. And then the way that you would identify P25, P50, P75 is here you're given these percentiles and you're asked for the data point that can be inferred from your data set. So basically we're going to use this formula that we talked about. Use this formula on the data set on 0.25, 0.5, and 0.75. Any questions? So the point of the box plot is it's a visualization of the summary of your data, where you can just look at it and you can quickly tell a summary of your data set. So it's an easy way to compare data sets, for example, where you can just look at it and you can tell what the bulk, where the bulk of your data lies. Any questions?
Are you gonna ask us for the P's or Q's for like hallmarks and stuff? Or we just
Either one, just be familiar that they represent the same thing. So if you ask for Q1, you know that's the same as P25, because a Q is a quartile. Any other questions?